Hello, Global Atheists once again. I have to tell you, me as a Latino, my dream has always been in the USA, or that was until like 7 years ago. Now, even if you paid me, I couldn't go there. And now we have a nice and interesting group of people who are going to help us and understand why this Latino doesn't want the American dream anymore. Let's go with the intro, sir. And today we have an interesting row of people with us to talk about the problems with the USA. Obviously, who is better to talk about the problems of a country than people who don't live in the country? Next to me is Phil, the Skeptic Atheist. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Just a little very peeved at the direction the US is going right now.
Oh, wonderful co-host, and I'm sure that we are all we are all afraid. Phoebe, can you introduce yourself, please?
Well, I'm Phoebe, and no matter what's wrong with America, my love for an American will conquer all, and I will be leaving Britain because, by Christ, it's far worse than America could ever dream to be.
Oh wow, that's scary. That's scary as heck. So yeah. Britain is out of the map for me as well. And Hen, nice to see you again. How are you, sir?
Hello. I'm okay. I was a bit under the weather last week, but I'm good now. And here in the Netherlands, we watch with interest at the coming elections in the US.
Be careful, that was too much interest. And obviously, we need an American, so I think I've seen this guy before, Mr. Secular Rarity. How are you today, pal?
I'm good. I'm really excited to remind you all why you should bleed red, white, and blue like myself. Why you should, accept the truth that the United States is just the greatest country in the. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I couldn't keep that going forever. But
I was going to ask for your eagle. Where is the eagle? Where is the flag?
Hey, I tell you this. SR's ego has been swallowed up by mine, I'm afraid. There can only be the space for one ego around these
What
parts.
can you do? What can you do? That's the British Empire for you. No.
But what I would say is that I am an unashamed, unabashed Americophile, and I make no bones about that.
As you see, people, this is going to be a very interesting episode. And before we start with the topic, I have to remind everybody here present that my hair is way more beautiful than Secular Rarity's, despite what the public says. So
the hair you lose to my hair, though, you just lose to my lovely luscious locks, though. You just lose.
Oh, that's going to be another contest, Phoebe. We will have to talk about that after the show. And oh, damn it, that hair is beautiful. So Secular, we may have a common enemy right now.
That's okay. We'll get together and we'll take over. America
Britain has been the common enemy of many people throughout history.
Well, this is America, even if it's North America or South America. Secular, we do share the thing of being free from the Britain. Say whatever you want about the British Empire, but they gave the world the biggest amount of freedom days in history. So there is that.
And Barbados is away from Britain now to Republic.
You see, we have a common history together.
What I will say is congratulations on the Republic of Barbados. I did an entire episode on that on another channel, on another show, which I shan't, gratuitously advertise here, but I did an entire episode on, how great it was that, you don't have King Charles III.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We will have in future a whole episode to talk about this interesting empire that decided to raid the whole planet for species, yet they decided to use neither in their cooking. And now we're going to talk about their prodigy son, the USA. And yes, guys, a lot of fucked up things are going on up there. It started with certain elections like 7, 8 years ago. After that, it continued going into this path to becoming a third world country with a big economy. Now even the economy is not that great. So I don't know what is so great about America. We will talk about that. We have seen there these, do I want to say tyrannic laws? Well, these laws that take basic human rights of people away. There are a lot of things, people. Come on, take your pick. What do you want to start with? Because
I'll tell you where the rot of America started. The rot of America started on December the 12th, 2000. That's where it started. And anybody that says it didn't start there doesn't understand American history, because on December the 12th, 2000, a man named Albert R. Gore, who, may I add, won the 2000 presidential election, was declared the loser by his opponent's daddy's friends in a building in America. And that's where the rot started, because if you don't have George W. Bush, you don't get Samuel Alito, you don't get John Roberts, and you don't get Donald Trump.
My gosh, it was 2012? Wow, that was close.
2000 is where America started to go to the wall.
I will say that it started long before that, because with the electoral college situation, where you have a president, where you have a person running for president who has the popular vote but end up losing because of the electoral college, the presidency. It's sad, because that happened in the case of George W. Bush too, because Al Gore did have, but before that too,
it was three times before that it happened.
Right, because the electoral college, the popular vote, Al Gore, going to 2000, Al Gore had the popular vote way more than Bush. But
quarter of a million more votes. Man with a quarter of a million more votes loses an election. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and then not only that, but then even with Trump running against Hillary Clinton.
Trump was the fifth time in US history that the loser of the popular vote had won the electoral college vote.
Yeah, and it's and the common factor there is the electoral college. And from what I have heard, I don't know how true it is, but from what I have heard is that the electoral college was actually set up to to keep the status quo and to prevent certain minority groups from taking.
Quote the founding fathers of America.
Right.
America is an experiment in democracy, but we don't want too much democracy. Because originally, electors in the electoral college weren't popularly elected. They were elected by state legislatures. The Senate of the United States was appointed by state legislatures, and the only direct democracy that you had in America was the United States House of Representatives. And we very nearly had a United States House of Representatives that, if the final and unratified portion of the Bill of Rights, because 11 of the 12 articles of the Bill of Rights have actually been ratified, and not a lot of people know that there was a number 12. It would have meant that every 30,000 bit of population in America would have resulted in a new member of the House of Representatives.
Yeah, that would have made sense.
Which, as it currently stands, would mean that there'd be roughly 10,000 members of the United States House of Representatives.
Yeah. Unfortunately, one of the biggest problems with the United States federal government is actually the original construction of it. And one of the biggest issues with that is the fact that there has been a narrative that has been spun to generations of people in the United States, generations of children, where we basically told them that until 1776, the rest of the world was pretty much a backwater that had no idea how to run a government and just had no concept. And then see a bunch of people in the United States got together, and then we perfected government. And we did that so long ago that now anybody that's upset about it is just clearly an un-American, piece of shit. That narrative has been spun for generations of children here in my country. And
as I say, Esa, you're conjuring up images in my head of a man who, with not much hair, running around a wrestling ring wearing yellow and red, who got found out for having some sex tape leaked, going by the name of Hulk Hogan, shouting, "You should say your prayers and eat your vitamins," and walking out to "I'm a real American," which is emblematic of what people think America is, but it's not the reality on the ground.
I would like to call some attention to what Secular said, because the USA has a huge problem with education. I always say that education is the best way to fix the problems in the world, and the USA is taking that backwards and is taking education away. And I've heard that teachers don't even have the freedom to teach at schools right now. Basic stuff like slavery are not being taught because people don't want to learn, apparently. And as usual, the churches in general have been trying to put religion inside their schools to indoctrinate children. So I would say that education is a huge and maybe the biggest problem in the USA right now, because as Secular said, anyone who dares to think logically is totally anti-American and goes against the greatest quotation marks country in the world. So,
I'm going to throw something controversial out here. America's teaching the wrong things. It shouldn't be teaching specifics. It should be teaching concepts, and it should be teaching you how to learn. It should be teaching you how to think critically. It shouldn't be teaching you specifics that have been curated by a board of bigots that you've never heard of in the middle of some board meeting in backwater Boardwatersville that's going to be as representative as George Bush presidency was to the people that he was trying to save after Hurricane Katrina. It's just as ridiculous as you can get. Because no matter what you teach in a classroom, you're going to teach other things that should be taught. And what you should be instilling in people is the love of learning. You should be instilling in people the ability to read properly, do mathematics properly, and to take a piece of information and say, "You are the Daily Mail, you are the Daily Wire, you are talking a load of shite."
So one of the big movements right now in public education across the United States that is having a pretty detrimental effect, in my opinion, is what's called charter schools. So charter schools is a concept where it is kind of in this middle ground between a private school and a public school. So it receives public funds, and there are various criteria that it has to meet. But those criteria are much lower than your standard public school. Also, on the flip side, charter schools are able to essentially create their own private charter. That's kind of the whole point. And they're allowed to, at the end of the day, basically be a Christian school without being a Christian school. And so the charter schools ultimately will take money out of, as they have been across the nation. We're seeing this in my state for sure. They take money out of the public schools, right, and funnel that into their school, meaning that the public schools now don't have enough funds to adequately run themselves or be an effective learning center for children. And then the charter school can just basically point to the public school and say, "Oh no, look how bad they're doing. Like, they're doing so terrible." And it's this weird swirling shit that just keeps getting worse because nobody wants to actually fund public schools in the United States. That's a huge problem.
So basically, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's it.
I've got a question here, Phil. What is the education in Barbados like? What's the education system in Barbados like?
Well, that's one thing I wanted to talk about in terms of when you said critical thinking, etc., and so on. That they talk about wanting to teach critical thinking, etc., but yet you still have religion, especially Christianity, playing a major role in public
Britain.
schools.
Well done there.
Right? And meetings, as I always said meetings, they want to start meetings with prayer. Yesterday they started some teachers professional day. They started with prayer and devotions and public school. And but yet you want to claim you're teaching, want to teach children critical thinking. But when it comes to question, especially religious thinking, I am a science teacher. Very little is taught about evolution. Very
You're not
little.
required to teach intelligent design, are you?
Not exactly, no. But they leave out a lot from when evolution is taught. It's like in the children that are going to do CXC, but that's a small portion, very small portion, right? The younger children don't have a clue, and if I raise, well, be evolved, whatever, they say, oh no, we were created, because they were being taught that too in primary school. So it's not really any real critical thinking in that way. There's no real critical thinking, even though it's talked about and about analyzing. So when you start to question, and a lot of religion is pushed in the school, right? That's why I am very concerned about what's happening in the United States, because before I said this is a good model where you separate church and state and keep religion out of school. Because as soon as you, especially when you introduce religion to school, all manner of critical thinking goes through the door. Despite they said they want to keep critical thinking. All right. So that's why too I've been following what's going on in the United States really closely, because the government here claims to be secular, but panders totally to Christianity. And now I'm seeing that is happening in the United States, but it's even worse because the Christian nationalists are trying to take over, and right now we need to get out away from this thing where they have prayers on mornings. It's Christian devotions, even though they will talk about ecumenical, and they don't have that. You don't have Hindus come in and give a prayer, or Muslims. I did one time, did a humanist twice, a humanist thing. First time the person came up and then said a Christian prayer. After I have covered everything, and I leave out Christian prayer. Second time, when I did a humanist invocation, at least nobody came and do a prayer after. So, but for the most part, it's Christianity 101.
And that really is one of the biggest, to kind of focus it to the now in the United States. One huge issue that I've heard a lot of people talk about is regarding things like religious freedom, right? And the ability for an individual to practice their own religion, irrespective of the government, what they say, and all that kind of good stuff. The issue with that right now is that the individuals that are actually kind of tasked with deciding where that line is cut, that's our Supreme Court. And our Supreme Court has essentially been hijacked. And not only our Supreme Court, but our federal court system as well. That was one of the things during Trump's presidency that he actually was incredibly successful at. Which is frustrating for me, to give him credit for doing something well, but it's like, I don't know, if you're doing like bad things really well, is that good? Anyway, the point is, he stacked our courts with individuals that will be in that position of power essentially until they die.
Him who stacked it. I don't think he stacked it. It was Mitch
Yeah,
McConnell who stacked it, because Mitch McConnell.
Well, it wasn't even Mitch McConnell; it was the Heritage Foundation. But none of that really matters.
I understand what you're saying. But what I'm saying is,
hang on just a second. Hang on, Phoebe. I'm almost finished. I swear to God. What the problem is that the individuals that are supposed to be interpreting the laws in a manner that reflects the actual understanding from precedent, those individuals do not care about that, and they're very vocal about saying that. And so the argument of, well, shouldn't we be able to, because religious freedom and so forth, the issue is that it's just not flying because those people don't care about that. But yeah, that was it. I'm done.
But here's the thing: religious freedom extends to the fact that you have the religious freedom to tell religion to sod the fuck off out of your life. You retain that right under religious freedom, because for there to be true religious freedom, you have to be able to have no religion.
Did you forget that we were talking about how education is failing in the USA, so people don't
I
actually understand what freedom of religion is?
But this brings me on to the case of Coalson v. Macon, which was the recent U.S. Supreme Court case from the state of Maine that said that it was unconstitutional for the state of Maine to have a school voucher system that excluded religiously instructed institutions.
Yep.
That's where we are in America. And we have this problem that the 5 people who actually run America are the 5 judges who actually run America. So America's not actually a democracy anymore. It's not even a republic anymore. It's just a critarchy of 5 judges who run the show have forgotten that other people's religions exist that aren't their religions.
Yes. But that's the same thing that is happening here too. So that's why I said it's scary, what is going on there, because yes, SCOTUS, they as Sarah correctly said, they are not concerned with the president of the law. They are more concerned about their beliefs and implementing their beliefs on the system. Then, really and truly, the Supreme Court justice is supposed to be upholding the laws, right? And the presidents of laws. And it's a real dangerous road they're going down. Because you see, and that is why there are some Christians who are not Christian nationalists who are speaking out against that, because they realize this is one particular. Remember, there are many thousands of different denominations, Christianity, with all different interpretations. And some of them are realizing, but these Christian nationalists speak for their group. And if they implement certain laws for their group, it's going to affect us, right? And not only that, but it's affecting. I keep saying, okay, we hear this narrative from a lot of Americans, especially Christian nationalists. Oh, America was built on Christian principles, is a Christian nation, blah, blah, blah. Because we have a large majority who is Christian. Same crap is used here in Barbados. Same shit is said here in Barbados. Oh, we are a Christian nation because you have like 70% Christians. It's not the large majority. It's not because you have a large majority of particular religion that makes that nation that particular religion. If you're a pluralistic society, which means you're made up of many different people from different religions, non-religious persons, and you have to cater. If you are talking about being secular and care about everyone, you have to cater for everyone. And the way to do that is separation of church and state, separation of religion and state. Otherwise, from history, we know whenever the religious took over, everything went to shit. Everybody else suffered, including other religions. And you see that even in Britain, we know that in Britain, that is a classic example.
The problem that you have that America could be going down the same route that, well, England went down in the 1600s.
Yeah.
1642, I draw your attention to the end of the English Civil War. And a man named Charles I had just lost because he genuinely believed that he had the divine right to rule and that he had been placed on this earth to rule not only over England, but over the empire, which included the 13 colonies. And they sliced his head off for it. So America needs to be very careful that it doesn't repeat its own history.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
we have had a fairly focused and organized Christian right-wing nationalist kind of focus in the United States for a very long time. And that's been one of the issues, is that when we put the two sides up against each other, we're talking about those that are shouting very hard about religious freedom and nothing else. And we talk about those that are shouting very hard about making this country essentially a theocracy, Christian theocracy, evangelical Christian. Yeah. The individuals on the evangelical theocracy side have had a structure and an organization, and most importantly, cash flow. They have had large amounts of money for decades that they have been utilizing. And for instance, one of the things that came out early on in Trump's presidency was essentially this far right, behind the scenes kind of pretend to be grass movement type thing, where they would, over about 15 to 20 years, they would start to insert themselves in places that are deeply important at a state and local level. And from there, they would then use that as a springboard to essentially start to more or less take over the federal government in various forms. This was an effort that they literally said at the start of, back in the late 80s. They were like, we're fine if this takes 30 years. We don't care. We'll play the long game. We'll let whatever progress you feel like you're making, we'll let that go. And we'll slowly start inserting ourselves into the school boards in your cities. We'll slowly start putting ourselves in the legislature in your state. And from there, we'll be able to essentially rig the system so that we don't lose. And that is what has happened in a lot of the United States. The absolute ridiculous gerrymandering that we have done, which I'm sure
Ohio. Ohio is the worst case. Ohio, a state which is 55-45 Republican to Democrat, routinely elects 80 to 85% of its representatives at congressional level as Republican. Wisconsin is 44% to 56% Republican to Democrat, but Republicans have super majorities in both houses.
Yes.
Yet they lost every statewide election in 2020.
And in Tennessee, almost half of the races can be called before we actually even open the polls, because literally the way that they have cut the demographics up in a certain voting block, the way they have done that is so that there is actually no chance of another individual winning. It just literally is that bad. We also have, and this is a fun one too, we also have a shit ton of people every election cycle who just literally don't have an opponent. There's just literally no one else on the ballot. It's like, you vote for this Republican or you don't vote. So
here's the thing that America is suffering from on both the left and the right is people basically telling the system itself to fuck off. This is what America has as a problem. People are not engaging in the system. I have a number of friends. I've got a very vocal friend who lives in Florida who says, I'm not voting. And I'm not voting because I don't like this person or that person. I'm not voting because I'm protesting the system itself. And if I vote, I'm validating a system that is failing. And if I vote, I'm validating everything they're doing by participating in it. So my protest is to not vote at all. And this is what you're going to see more and more and more happen in America. People are going to exercise their right to protest in ways that you weren't expecting them to exercise their right to protest. We did it in Britain in 2012 when we had a series of elections that nobody was really interested in, nobody really wanted. The government decided to introduce elected police commissioners. And so the head of your local police force was elected by the people. Nobody wanted it. It was one of these things that the government pressed the head with. Turnout for these elections was 12%.
Well,
And in
Wow.
some places, there were ballot boxes returned to counting stations empty.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest problems in Tennessee, is that we're a non-voting state. We're a state that just does not have a lot of people that come out. And I don't mean like, hey, your local school board, right? Or your local.
You're talking at
accountant.
presidential level.
I'm talking, fucking everything.
Wow.
For some reason, the people in my state do not get out and vote. And again, this isn't me saying like, here's the total population of the state and like how many of those. No. I'm not even saying, hey, here's the amount of people that are like eligible to vote. No. I'm saying people who actually went through the process at some point in their life of signing up to be a registered voter. Individuals that there is no bar. There is absolutely no bar stopping them from going to the poll and making their voice heard. And they don't. And that is a huge problem in my state. And there are other states here in the southeast of the United States that are exactly the same. We just don't vote. And again, I, kind of going back to what Phoebe was saying with her friend in Florida, like, I understand that sentiment from a lot of people. I do get that. It is frustrating time and time again when you feel as if basically all of your effort is for nothing, because once again you stand there and watch as your whole state just completely goes blood red, when it's like, wait a second, I know so many people that are registered Democrats, like, why is that the case? But it's because they have rigged the system in a way that technically is it's not illegal what they're doing. So it's this weird gray area.
Using
guess-
the law, using
Mhm.
the system to get what they want, without actually being illegal.
So what will eventually happen if this continues is that the system itself will just collapse under its own weight, because so many people will look at the institution. So they'll see the Supreme Court just ruling however it likes. They'll see Congress just doing whatever it wants. They'll see the corrupt presidents doing whatever they want. And they will see people that are running their states, like Ron DeSantis, deporting people to Martha's Vineyard. And we'll see people like Greg Abbott just sticking two fingers up at court cases. And people will go, why should I bother to endorse the system? And then the next thing they will do is they will say, why should I bother to fund the system? And that's where it will start to hurt, because eventually people will stop voting, people will stop recognizing the system, people will stop recognizing the authority of the people trying to enforce the rules, and people will eventually just say, I'm not paying the taxes that pays you because you don't do anything, so why should I keep on doing that? And that will be in a variety of ways. So people won't set up businesses, people will go to the black market, or they'll just leave America entirely, and they'll give up their citizenship. Or if they don't go their citizenship, when America comes knocking and says you will pay this, that, and the other because you hold an American passport, they'll just go, piss off.
I don't think. Sorry, I have to go against you, Phoebe, because what I see is that the USA already has. I don't know how it's called when you have only one party, but this thing that in the USA you have left and right, that's bullshit. Let me tell you, down here we have left and right. It's chaos. They are totally opposite. Over there you have extreme right and right. That's it. And people still stay there. And people don't vote, but they keep living under their rules. They cannot leave the country because they don't have enough money. And rich people, let's face it, they never leave the country because they are comfortable and they have a whole network that keeps them rich in their own country. So
here's the thing,
even if people
to follow up what you're saying there, how many multi-millionaires and multi-billionaires pay the taxes into the system that they are supposed to pay into the system, that they haven't then turned around and said, I'm going to use fancy accounting tricks, I'm going to have offshore bank accounts, and they are the first people that are stopping funding the system. Because the top 1% of America pay for 50% of America. And if that top 1% of America start to remove their money, then they're the people who can. The system will start to fall apart.
That's the point. They want to remove the system because they won't remove their money because they are too comfortable over there. So they will keep doing things as they are doing.
But their money is not funding the system.
poor people are the ones who are funding the system.
How do you
Poor
get
people
blood
are
out
the
of a
ones who,
stone? How do you get people to pay taxes when they don't have any money to pay taxes with?
because you're paying taxes whenever you work, whenever you go to your
Mhm.
job,
What
whenever
work?
you
What
commute,
job?
whenever
is the
whenever
middle
you
class
buy
and
food, whenever you pay rent, whenever you do that, you are paying taxes, even if you want it or
Can't
if you
afford to
don't
rent
want
a
it.
house in America. You can't afford to heat it. You can't
But-
afford to buy food, and there aren't any jobs.
And yet people keep
But
doing
it's
it somehow.
very-
And as long as people keep surviving and striving, they will keep doing it, and the government will keep running the way it's been doing it so far. Sorry, Phil.
I remember it's middle class. The middle class is who necessarily supports or like here is the middle class who keeps the country buoyant, right?
Yeah, it's
And
always
they're
like
the
that.
ones that are paying the most of the taxes, right? And cutting corporation tax, like what some propose, like what's her name? I propose that don't help anybody because the money just goes into the profits of the same corporation. They don't care about the middleman or the poor person. They're about keeping their profits up. And right now we are having here, luckily we have what's called Fair Trading Commission, which utility companies can't just change their rates like that. They have to present a very good case to the Fair Trading Commission in order for Fair Trading Commission to say, yes, you can go ahead and do that. They can't go ahead and do it on their own. And right now we have had where the Barbados Light and Power, the electric utility company, applied the Fair Trading Commission to up the rates. One of the arguments is, oh, if we don't up our rates, we are not going to get investors. They don't really care about the poor person that is affecting, because right now, because of the fuel costs, of course, electricity has gone up. And people and the good thing about that is that the Fair Trading Commission, you have persons, allows people who are dissent against this happening to make their case. And a lot of persons are saying, but this is not a good time to be raising rates. And if the argument is, well, you won't get investors because the rates are too low, they don't care about the people who are suffering, who are barely paying their electric bill, etc. So, but it is usually, and I know in the United States, it is also the middle class and usually poor persons who are paying the taxes more so than the cooperation, because as we know, a lot of corporations try to weasel their way out of paying a lot of the taxes that they need to pay. And when people stop voting and stop paying taxes, you know who get hurt? The same very people. Here, if that was to happen, the same very people will get hurt, because we have free quote unquote education, taxpayers paying for the education. The universal, we have universal health care, just like the United Kingdom. Taxpayers paying for that. So if they decide not to vote and not to pay taxes, they are hurting themselves.
Yeah.
I think you
Also-
brought up a couple of good points too. Another issue in the United States is, again, this narrative that has been spun to us for so long about how basically the government should like never, ever, 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 ever like step into your finances or anything. Or anything like we just don't want government a part of anything that you do personally, unless you happen to be gay, of course, or you happen to be black, or poor,
or a woman.
abortion, or yeah, right. So there's this narrative that has been spun for so long of this, completely individualistic, very self-made, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps,
which by the way is BS.
Oh yeah, it's literally impossible.
Absolute BS.
Never happened in the history of America, but whatever. But it is this pervasive thought that has again been taught to generation after generation that anytime the government comes to you and says, oh my gosh, it looks like you need help, like here's some of the money that we collect regularly from you and we're going to put it back into, like, that is just evil. That is just, it's not even on a level of like socialism, communism. It's not even on, it just literally jumps all of that to just pure evil for some people. And that is a problem, because ultimately exactly what you guys were talking about, like there are lots of systems that can totally be effectively run by the government and would do a hell of a lot better of a job than what we're doing.
And the government is supposed to do that. Oh, go Phil, and then I have to mention something.
Okay, SR, what you said there is so vital, because what they have been doing to, we realize what Christian nationalists have been doing to, is claiming, oh, this is socialism, this is socialism. Even if it's socialism, it's not communism. It in the sense of where the government is trying to help people. Like, I know over there, which had me really confused, is how Obama tried to introduce universal health care. Maybe Clinton, to a certain point, was trying to move towards that point. Universal health care works. How it works, if you get your population, keep them healthy, especially even the poor persons, and you provide universal health care, you have people working, you are collecting taxes. Right? So it confuses me why they will be against universal health care for persons. Canada has universal health care, it works for them. UK has universal health care, it works for them. I'm not saying it's perfect, but
just to jump in
works.
Jump in on this very point. The reason why the UK has a system of universal healthcare is because we were fighting 2 world wars, and we were, in the words of the people at the end of the First World War, we were getting grade C recruits when we needed to fight a grade A war. So the government had realized that it wasn't keeping its population healthy, and therefore the government couldn't defend itself. It couldn't defend the country itself. And I think America has, for a very long time, lived in this very lovely little isolationist bubble where it has been able to feed itself, fuel itself, look after itself, etc. And globalization has come along. China has turned up. European Union has turned up. Africa is turning up. Australasia and Oceania, I say hello again. And America is feeling somewhat left in the cold, because it's been quite enjoying this position where it can sit at the top of the tree, and it's only really had one person against it for a very long time, and that was the Soviet Union, where it's gone, yeah, we'll just go and invade Grenada without telling the Queen of England. We'll just go and invade Vietnam because we like it. We'll go and invade Korea because we don't like what's going on there. And it's had impunity to do that. And the last time it tried to do that, it got a large slap round the face from a French man named Jacques Chirac in the UN Security Council when he said the UN will not be invading Iraq with you.
I guess this is a good time to mention that the army that the USA loves so much, guys, that is the socialism that you hate so much. You know, you're
absolutely
paying
the Department
for your
of Veterans. Here's something: the Department of Veterans Affairs provides free health care to more Americans than any other part of the world.
Oops.
More people are provided free health care in America than any other part of the world. So say Britain has a population of 60 million, fewer people are provided free healthcare in the UK than the Department of Veterans Affairs provides to the US and US citizens and nationals.
Well,
it's also worth noting that when you become an elected federal representative on any level, you also get federally funded healthcare for the rest of your life. It's also worth
socialism. Oh, come on. And that's disgusting. That happens in here as well, and I'm totally against it. But I want to take this to the USA again, because we have seen that in the USA, education is going down, the drain. People are not voting. You have only one representative power in charge, in command of everything. I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with Orwell's work and the novel 1984, where there is only one political party and that political party controls everything. And Christians are trying to turn the USA into that, an Orwellian community, similar to what is happening in Afghanistan right now, where, you know, the religion controls everything. They have been doing a huge work on that. And before people say, oh, Orwellian was totally predicting the future, no, this has happened in the past. People have seen this before. In there, things have been only being exaggerated. But the USA is taking things even farther down there. And it's awful how the USA is turning itself into a third world country without free education, without health. And they are happy to go this way. And there are people constantly making a huge effort to make sure that it stays that way. And once again, harms of religion, people. When you have Christian fundamentalists trying to turn this country into a religious country that follows religious obsolete ideas, there you have the biggest harm of religion, how it's going to affect your whole society and why we do this. So, Orwellian community I see down there. And
I'm gonna throw a firebomb of a question. Is America salvageable? Is it worth saving, or should it just be, you know, scrapped and start again? Is it even worth trying to save this?
So
is it a write-off? Is it a car that's a complete write-off that we should just be sending to the scrap heap and starting again?
I think, and you know, I'm not confident enough to put any life savings on this bet or anything, but
you wouldn't bet the farm on it.
Yeah, no way. Because I wouldn't get bailed out by the government. But anyway,
you would. You're a farmer. Department of Agriculture would bail you out.
So I think recently there has been a shift in a couple of different places that I think are really important. One of which being we have in this country finally lost our sacrosanct reverence for the Supreme Court. I think more and more people have finally come to a place where they're saying, look, the Supreme Court is just another branch of our government, just the same as our legislature and our executive branch. And this is something that we actually need to take part in. For literal decades, our Supreme Court held like the highest of approval rating from the average person, even though despite the fact that they've made shitty rulings the entire time, right? But there's that, as well as a more, at least recently, I'm hoping that what we saw in Kansas about the abortion vote will continue through, because the biggest thing that actually mattered in that vote was voter turnout. It was just literally people actually being, you know, participatory in the system in any way, shape, or form. And I think that we're starting to see an uptick in that. I'm really hopeful that we are. One of the biggest issues, again, goes back to what I was saying earlier about this narrative that somehow our founding fathers got it all right. They perfected the government, you know, many a year ago. What we need to do is we need to have an honest accounting of where we are and whether or not this actually adheres to the lofty ideals that were expressed, whether or not we're applying the good ideas correctly that are there, right? Change the ones that are crap, change the ones that don't matter. Our Constitution literally still has a part in it, by the way, just for anybody that isn't, you know, well versed on this. Our Constitution still has a section that literally says Black people are 3/5 of a person.
Yeah, but that was repealed by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments.
Yeah, technically, right?
But here's the thing.
But we need to...
But you don't actually change the original text. You just say this part of it doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah, but so...
works.
Yeah, and the issue with that, in a lot of senses, is that we're still maintaining this idea that what we started with was as good as it could get, basically. When in reality, it was a piecemeal compromise to make everybody stop bitching at each other. And where we've gotten to these days is so far beyond that we do need to go back and we do need to have a more focused effort of trying to revise our system of government. It is set up in such a way that ultimately only two parties are viable. And what you get in that system is one where exactly what you guys were talking about earlier. You have a polarization where people get further and further and further. And ultimately, the people that sit in the middle on either side, left or right, are actually ultimately just voting right. Because the left seems so far away at this point, and the far right seems, well, that's kind of already the status quo. Maybe they take an extra step, but not too bad, you know? But yeah, at its core, our government has problems that are the reason that we're seeing a lot of this garbage today. And we don't want to actually go back and try and fix it. Again, I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful, you guys, and maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's just my blind patriotism.
You still haven't beaten the optimism of the American out of you.
That's
you still haven't beaten that out of you. They always say Americans are the most optimistic nation going, and there's SR, still espousing the optimism of America in the face of, polarization, nuclear winter around the corner in Europe, and America will be fine eventually. It'll be fine, don't you know?
I think we'll be able
I have to disagree. Down here, we believe we can survive despite our conditions. And to your answer, I was going to say, should we save America? I may feel tempted to say no, but secular lives there. So because of that guy, we have to save the country. This guy here is a national treasure. We have to save him.
As I see it,
here's the next question that goes with it. What is America then? And what is it that we're saving if we are to save America? So what is it that is actually going to be saved? What is this carcass that I am looking at? Am I looking at the burnt out wreck of a car that are going to put together, or is it a cow that's been decaying for far too long in a field that's got flies coming out of it and has vultures that have been tearing apart its carcass? What am I actually looking at here?
Well, you're looking.
I was pretty sure that we were talking about, the limits and the regional, the area and the parks. But before we answer that, I really want to hear what Hein had to say. Hein, you were going to say something?
Yeah. Well, more in there's several things to this. I mean, I think that the U.S. has a rather large agenda of things they need to improve in simply infrastructure of their politics, election systems. There's a lot. We talked about this in another episode of this video. Anyway, I grew up in a world where the US were a nation of heroes, shiny people roughly 3 meters tall, each of them sending rockets to the moon, liberated my nations from the Nazis. They were heroes.
The American dream that Hollywood sells.
American freedom in action with the barrel of a gun.
Yes, of course, because already then, I mean, I grew up in the 60s, so that rotten bit in Vietnam was going on.
That was great. That was brilliant. Wonderful there.
Yeah. Anyway, as I grew up, the shine wore off pretty fast. But at least, let's say, I mean, I started to realize that it's really bad when Reagan became president. That was a bad one.
Yeah.
Particularly because he, I mean, stuff like rampant nationalism, if you're not a patriot, you're not an American thing, that started with Reagan. And things haven't improved much.
Yeah. And I think ultimately there are, so kind of back to your reference earlier, Phoebe, about you're looking at this carcass. I think there are some bones here that are super valuable. I think the issue is
the engine of the car is still there. So is it a car or is it the car or is it the cow? Which one is it?
Let's say it's a car, and what we have is a solid chassis. But our engine and our battery and our tires and our seat belts and our airbag,
the
all of
gearbox
that
and
is
all
fucked.
that's gone.
Everything else is fucked. But we
We've
actually
still
have
got
a
a
decent,
viable chassis. Okay, we'll grant you
we
that.
have a decent shape of a car. Yeah. We've got the bare bones here, and we what we have done over the years is we have continued to apply incorrectly over and over and over. And again, I mean, Hein was just saying, yeah, back in the 80s, we had this, start of this moral majority, this idea
Million
of
bums crap.
exactly. And that has continued to fester and grow and get more and more vocal and violent and extreme in a lot of different ways. And the reason that has been the case is because they have used those bare bones, that basic framework, and said, well, we're just applying it. We're just applying the law. And we've allowed, for decade after decade, we've allowed this interpretation and this change of what actually is law. And because of that, and because we haven't had a concerted pushback from the left in this country, they have continued to just expand the right further and further and further into territory that they never should have had. And so, yeah, ultimately we're in a place that is deeply fucked. I would argue personally.
Okay. I've got a question for you then. What's right with the USA?
Well, so for instance, the United States Constitution is the basis for over like 100 some odd constitutions in the world. So there are a bunch of good aspects about just setting up the government, the separation of powers, as well as the separation of church and state. Again, the application of that has maybe been paltry, but the actual ideas itself that make up a lot of these aspects are really good. Again, the concept of a Supreme Court that is separate from the legislature, that is also separate from the executive branch, but still has checks and balances on that.
Like, a piece of trivia here for you. Just on that, a piece of trivia here. Do you know when the UK Supreme Court became an independent body, separate from the legislative branch and separate from the executive branch? 2005.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Wow. That's surprising.
Because in 2005 in 2004 they passed an act called the Constitutional Reform Act, which finally removed the post of Lord Chancellor from sitting as a member of the judicial branch, legislative branch, and executive branch of the government. So there was one member who was appointed by the government who was both a legislature and member of the executive and a judge all at the same time.
That's weird.
And
I have to say,
also,
I love Phoebe's historical knowledge. Guys, sadly, this conversation is amazing, but we are reaching the end of this. So I'm going to ask you to start talking about the final thoughts. Phoebe, we really need you a whole episode talking about about UK history and other stuff that is wrong with Europe. This has been awesome,
you could just
guys.
interview me for a day. And I'll just keep going.
Phoebe, I'm going to interview you in Spanish if you agree with that one of these days.
Comprendre en espagnol. Je suis désolé, je ne parle en espagnol. Tu parles en français, monsieur?
No, Phoebe, eso es italiano, no es español. Me siento insultado ahora. Okay, guys, final thoughts before we start wrapping up everything?
Yeah. All right. Phoebe, go first. I will do last and give the Patreons. Go ahead, Phoebe.
We're fucked. America's fucked. But
you heard that, Secular?
Here's the thing, though. If it uses the right kind of protection, it can stop itself from dying. It may be fucked, but it ain't dead yet. And with the right antibiotics, the right trips to the correct sexual health clinics, it can clean up its image and it can climb out of the gutter and it can start, dust off its knees when it's, getting there. It's like so close to rock bottom, but it hasn't quite got there yet. And here's the question. Is it going to fester at rock bottom, or is it going to say, I don't really like rock bottom and I'm going to get up? I hope it does the latter, because I'm an America-phile and I love America geographic entity and its history and its foundations, but I'm not particularly a fan of the critarchy that's running it and all the nonsense that comes with, I'm a real American and I go to church. If you don't go to church, I'm going to make sure that you are the dirtiest and nastiest person, even if you have a God, because you're a brown-skinned person that doesn't do the same correct thing that I do. You go to a mosque or a synagogue instead of a church, therefore you're wrong. You're like the worst kind of human being ever, and I would like to purge you from America and purge you from American politics. And then when that happens, and if America decides it's going to do that, then maybe those antibiotics will work. But until that time, America is royally fucked, even though it got rid of the king in 1776.
Thanks, Phoebe. Hein?
Yeah, I'm not without hope. I'm not optimistic. I think that things will get worse for the US before it gets better. That it may even run into Jesus Nazi state. I see that happening, and they may. I mean, the Nazis don't need much of the power to grab the lot. We've been there.
Yep.
But I'm not without hope. Americans in general aren't bad people, and they're not stupid. They do stupid things. But on the other hand, when they decide to do something, their people is capable of very good things.
Mm-hmm.
And dear American, what do you have to say in your defense? Defense of your country?
Yeah.
The closing arguments, and the jury will return its verdict soon.
Yes, sure. Yeah. The jury's rigged. I already know that. But yeah, I would say that at the end of the day, what we have in America is we have an apathy problem. We have an education problem. What we have is a structure that, when applied correctly, works more often than not. And there are good aspects of our government. There are good aspects about how we do things in America as opposed to other countries. And that's awesome. But we can't allow that to run the narrative and say that because that's the case, because that's how we feel, there's nothing we can improve on. What we need is more people, honestly, frankly, who just give a shit and are willing to actually do something. Even if at the end of the day, it is the bare fucking bones that you can do, we need that. Again, one of the biggest problems in my state is the fact that we don't vote. People that have the ability to vote do not, for whatever reason. And those types of issues, those basic foundational issues, have to be addressed, or we will never see any progress whatsoever. I would say I agree that we will probably see a worse couple of years. The next few years will probably not be super great. But if those of us that care about other people, if those of us that give a shit that people aren't criminalized just for being who they are, if those of us will get together and actually start to work with each other and actually get vocal about shit, we won't have to deal with these problems that much anymore. We will be able to fix this. We do have the ability. It's just a matter of whether or not we're actually going to put our efforts into doing that. So hopefully what we can get is a lot of real poignant criticism from y'all and the rest of the world to remind us that we're not the only fucking people on this planet, because we do need that reminder every so often. So
I really hope you're right, my dear friend.
The rest of the world is not the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans.
It is helpful.
Yeah. I have to say, I was going to say the same thing Secular said in terms of voting. People need to get out and vote, and people also not only need to get out and vote, but put their name on the ballot if they really care about the direction it's going to make a change, right? To bring a change away from the shittiness that's happening. People have to come out, run for office, run for the legislature, run in your local governments, etc., to pull it back, right? And to make real change. So, yeah, people got to go out and vote. They have to get themselves out there, get things changed. Sitting back does not help. It's not helping anyone. It's not helping you. You need to get out there and do something about it. So, on that note, I would love to thank our wonderful patrons, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Bryce Cornell, Deborah Grace, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and the person that has similar first name to me, Phil Calderone. Thanks,
He knows some of
patrons.
those people. Amazing
Yeah,
people.
they sound familiar. Yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
some of them do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, people. Please don't forget to watch the other shows that are produced in here. We are sure that you will love them. And with that, we're finishing this interesting episode about the USA and what we are around the world see that is wrong with it. I really hope the country gets well enough so I'm not afraid of it anymore. I hope this becomes a country that my country can copy without me fearing that we're going to become and turn into a theocracy. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching and see you soon. Bye-bye.